Right in. So my name is James Waldron, been in the asset recovery space for over 25 years, licensed PI, licensed locksmith, founded a repossession company. It's been several years. And like you said, a member of the American Recovery Association, as well as other associations that I actively participate in. So the agenda today is we're going to look at cost-effective collateral locating. One thing that we need to all be aware of, both on the lender side and repo side, is that many repo companies and also the lender repo skip departments, they're going to be pressured to increase production with stressed budgets, which means, people higher than our pay grade are not going to want to contribute much more to the budget in those departments. So we want to effectively look at the cost-effective ways to efficiently skip trace. We're going to do this by the basics of data. We're going to look at overall the data reports and the best way to utilize technologies as well. Now, in a disclosure, laws may vary from state to state. Please verify compliance with your local and state laws and your client agreements. If you're a repo agent, some clients do not allow you to skip trace. Please make sure you abide by your service agreements. Additional skip trace compliance can also be found through the CCRS ARA compliance program. So skip tracing, thrill of the chase. If you like the thrill of the chase and you love skip tracing, then you'll understand it. There's no greater feeling than when that asset is finally located and crosses over the finish line. So let's first look at the types of skip. The unintentional skip is somebody who they had no intention of skipping. They just lost contact. They're not trying to hide, just you can't find them. The intentional skip, somebody who moves often and they're purposely trying to evade you. Agency skip, this is important to note. This is created by the wrong notes. Somebody put in the wrong address, misinformation, assumptions that they're a skip, and they're really not. Then, of course, there's the criminal intent. The fraudsters, the ones who have no intention of ever paying, and they will purposely mislead. Signs of a skip. So, payments coming from other names. You may be chasing John Smith and Mary Smith is the one sending in the payments from a different location halfway across the state or country. Return mail. These are all things that are pretty obvious to us all, but we figured we'd start with the basics. Also, bad and outdated changes in contact information. They may change their address, their POE, phone numbers. There's changes in their life. Employment may no longer be valid, or if they were working at McDonald's, say in Dallas, and all of a sudden they're working in McDonald's in Jackson, Mississippi, I think it would be safe to say that they possibly moved to Jackson, Mississippi. Obviously, if the address is vacant, they're no longer physically at the provided address. Location data is not at the given address, which means if you have a GPS, LPR hits, they're not in the region or at the address that's provided. And for many of us agents, we know it's a door knock when when a client sends over an account says, please door knock on the first run. That's usually a sign that they're just trying to get us to validate the address. So where do you begin on the skip process? Well, you have to stop and first make sure that the client's lien is valid. Sometimes they may be a lien loss. It may be something where they didn't perfect their lien. Always validate the lien. If you have access to it, check the credit application. What did they put on there? References, insurance. Do they have new insurance? Any contact information that they provided you that may not be in the file. The POE. Now, you may not have an active place of employment, but it's important to know what type of work they do. If they were a nurse, odds are they're probably still a nurse, and they may not be at the location, but look where they possibly may work in similar fields. Location history, GPS, LPR. And obviously the account notes. There's a lot of valuable information in account notes that when we review with clients often, 3 months ago, they said the vehicle's sitting here and they wanted to surrender. Well, 4 addresses later, that would have been great to know. So tools that we can use to find our debtor and or collateral, social media, there's data brokers. As you can see on the screen, there's several data brokers. Look up other vehicles that they may own. Reporting addresses. And one thing that's becoming more common is co-living. We call it couch surfing, where they jump from place to place to place. So those are the ones that are a little bit tougher to find. Now, data reporting can be a little bit tricky. I do find that different data sources give different data regionally. Some are stronger in certain regions than others, so just kind of take note of what works best for you in your region. Utilizing vehicle locate data. So whenever you have any type of locate data, whether it's GPS, LPR, you kind of need to look at the human element of it. Look for the patterns, historical data that coincide with holidays, birthday, and events. The odds are they may be at the same location for their birthday again. Repeat locations by day and time. Look those up as far as what could possibly be a POE, and note the date and time, because if you're not noting in ClearPlan, your agents are going to be running the daytime hit at night and vice versa. So make sure you kind of notate that so your agent knows when to run those. Crisscross any addresses with known associates. And you want to use data to drive better recoveries. You know, data is solid, but the customer does not have the vehicle. That's the one that's tough, because you'll have a good address for the customer, but have no idea where the vehicle is. That's when locate data definitely helps. And utilize data to target the best possible asset location. And do not give up. Always keep checking. Check the GPS. I can't begin to explain how many accounts that we've had over the years where GPS stopped working, and then all of a sudden, 7 months later, we're getting pings. Also, be wary of new LPR hits, new registration, just any new information that will pop up. Don't give up. So digesting the data. So these are a couple of issues that we have. You have collection agencies that'll trigger current reporting address. So if you see this is an example, all fake addresses, where you'll see some addresses report current, but they're not. It's where a collection agency went in, they typed it as current, and now it's all of a sudden reporting current again. Look for the newer reporting addresses with cross-known information. So if you're looking at this and you know that Debtor Street has been a bad address for quite some time, then don't send an agent there. Look for shared addresses with people and assets. So if they have shared an address with somebody and they're not reporting anything new, and they've shared that address, the last 4 addresses, they may be with that same person. Same thing with assets. If they register a vehicle with somebody and their other vehicle has a brand new reporting address, it's worth checking out. Also look up reported evictions and judgments. If you see ABC apartment complex has a judgment against John Smith, and the ABC apartments are located on Debtor Street, then it's a good chance they're not in the same apartment that they just got evicted from. Look for child support divorce filings. Exes are always bitter and willing to give up information. Reporting address, landlord verification. Depending on how the contract reads, many skip agencies are allowed to call the landlord to verify if the debtor lives there. We used to get a lot of utility reporting. So look and see, some areas are better at it than others. Look and see if there's any current and active utilities. Things to note: not everything reporting is current or solid. Again, those collection agencies, they report it as current. It's going to start popping back as a current address. Overlapping address. This is a major issue where even AI struggles with it, where an old address will report current again, then all of a sudden it's showing current, and it's going to trigger a run. They want it ran. Another thing to know is if you're in an area that has a lot of trailer parks or people don't really move too often, look at where you see Debtor Street on here as an example. You see 624 and 214. Now this may be a trailer park where they move from trailer 214 to trailer 624. Be mindful of that, because it is a common occurrence. So if you're checking trailer 214, you might, if it's a large trailer park, you might be a half a mile off and you need to go to 624. Another thing to note is junior and senior. They often overlap on these reports. So try to dissect which one is junior, senior, the first, third, or fourth. A noteworthy thing is the one-time reporting address. If you see it in bright green right there on your screen, the 2570 South Las Vegas Boulevard, those are worth checking, because sometimes those are utility hits and it's a one-time check, or it's where an apartment complex did a quick credit inquiry. Usually we find that those are about 30% accurate as far as a good address. I'll take 30% on a skip any day. Long-time reporting addresses, always crisscross those because they may be the parents. If you're chasing somebody who's 22 years old, they may be back with the parents, but it's also a good place to check and see if you have nothing else to go on of a possible person to reach out to. And again, before you send out field agents, always try to get a second verification. Don't send them out on everything that looks good. It'll be way too many addresses. Too much information can be a bad thing. Now, indirect information, you as a repo agent, you will need to try to push back on your lenders to try to get any and all information, such as insurance. We do not have access to, the lenders do. So look for mailing and garaging locations on the insurance. Their mailing address may be different from the garaging address. Always double check that. On the insurance, look for any other vehicles. If you're chasing a specialty unit, look for their other vehicles on there. What's the garaging information? Garaging information is also important because they may list the storage unit they're keeping the RV or specialty unit in. Or if it's a business, the garaging address may be different from the mailing address. Also look for other listed drivers. If you're chasing a Corvette for an 88-year-old man, he's probably not driving a Corvette, but he's got a 22-year-old grandson listed. Well, then that's who you need to start looking for if he's a listed driver. Also look up DMV, driver's license, and license records. So those switch and need to be updated often, including professional licenses. And again, look for other vehicles registered to the debtor and listed parties. They may register those because that's what they're currently driving, and your vehicle, they stopped driving and are waiting for somebody to pick it up at an address nobody knows about. So they tossed it aside and they're driving something else. New POE information showing, always know anything and everything that you see. Crisscross addresses as well. Individuals that have shared addresses, we just reviewed that a little while ago. So husband, wife, spouse, kids, anything and everything you can find that crisscrosses that have shared addresses that may report new. Look up vehicle reports, Carfax, anything like that. Look for anything you can find on a vehicle report. If I'm chasing something over here in Austin, Texas, and it's getting serviced in, Wyoming, obviously they're probably up in Wyoming, or whoever has the vehicle is in Wyoming. Look for credit reporting. Again, look up the regional areas, possible spouse and in-laws. There's nothing better than an ex in-law. And again, phone numbers, email addresses, crisscross those because sometimes you can find their associates that they're running with. And next slide. Social media. So this is important to know. CCRS does train on this. You can look, but do not interact or touch. You do not have permission to do so, and you can run into some serious issues on that. So look, try to find the information, but do not interact with a debtor on social media. So when you go into social media, look for any customer and their known associates. And note locations, backgrounds, any tags that you see, run the tags. Maybe you'll get something off that. Who else is tagged and how often? So a lot of people in office settings, they go out all the time. They might have their Friday night at the bar and they all tag each other. Crisscross who they're tagging with because you may be able to find their POE. Again, if Nurse Jen works down at the clinic and she's tagging 4 other people on a Friday night and she's saying, hey, here goes my coworkers. Well, now you have a new possible POE. And that's where that common alignments come in. Do they have any new friends or followers? Maybe they're in a different community and all of a sudden, they moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and now all of a sudden they're adding a lot of friends in Charlotte. Odds are if a new address pops up in Charlotte, they have new friends in Charlotte, and they're possibly there. Look up trends and patterns, any places that they commonly go. If you see that they go out drinking every Friday night at a bar, well, maybe that's where you need to be on Friday night to snag their vehicle and have them walk home sober. Simple Google search of a name. We had a case not too long ago. She had kind of a weird name. We put it into Google, and guess what? The Subaru that we were chasing was involved in a fatality wreck, and she was in jail up in Idaho. Simple Google search saved us from even running the account. Contacted the local sheriff's office, who gave us the number to the tow yard. VIN verified, sent us photos that the vehicle was totaled sitting in their impound and had been sitting there for 7 months on a police hold. We would have been running the 7 addresses for nothing. Simple Google search. Look and search images. So this is something fairly new. You can use an AI image search. ChatGPT 5 actually has a pretty good program where if you see them put in photos, you can actually run it through there, and it may not tell you the exact location, but if it picks up on things, it will tell you an exact location, or it may narrow it down. So if you have somebody from Texas that moved to Miami, Florida, it's going to tell you based off the trees and background, this is the region they may be in. It's really cool to see. If you get a chance, not business wise, and want to play around with that, I would encourage you to do so. It's really cool. Tools to find your assets. Again, I don't like spending money to find people. I try to do it as cheaply as possible. I'm a cheap person, and being frugal is what I'm known for. So tools to locate your collateral. Lenders, please keep track of notifications. Look through your notes for any notifications that you've had in reference to the vehicle. Any cancellations of insurance or updates. Look for any tow logs, local police department notices. Anytime the vehicle's gotten towed that you've received tow notice. It's important to note because it'll tell you where it was towed from. LPR, GPS data. Don't always delete it. Keep it in there for safekeeping in the future in case that loan gets to the point you have to repo it, you know where to look. Sometimes those LPR hits that are one-offs from 2 years ago may be in an area an agent never has gone back through, and that's where the vehicle's sitting. Again, vehicle service data is important. If you look at Carfax, see where it's gone. Sometimes you can call these little oil change places and they'll give you information as to who brought it in and when. Look up your DMV reports. Is there anything new reporting, any new updated information? Now, this is another thing that AI really needs to catch up on with DMV reporting. And I know there's a couple of people working on that where you could put in that VIN number and it's going to run it across all 50 states. So again, look up also parking tickets, violation search, any parking permits that they have, any systems that you have access to. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. And then, of course, open records requests. If you have somebody that's involved in a fatality wreck or they were arrested and you believe the car was impounded, sometimes you can put in an open records request and they'll give you the information as far as what was seized and when and where. So again, some platforms cost nothing. Open records requests through most police agencies, I don't believe they charge you anything for that. So again, useful links for free searches. Kind of go through here. Auto return is a huge one that includes many states, San Francisco to Denver, Austin, Round Rock, San Antonio. I mean, you go on their website, it's a lot of municipalities. Wherever you report your repos to, look and see if they have a tow log that you can access. Houston, it's findmytowedcar.com. New York City, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles. But do note, like, for instance, Seattle has their own where you can look up tickets, but King County, which is the county there, also has their own. So your county and city may vary. As you can see, there's a whole laundry list of them there. And there's different places, and note that your towaways and parking tickets may be on different sites. So in Austin, I can look up to see if a vehicle's ever been towed or repossessed before. Usually about 5% of our skips we can get that way. And then for the ones that park in the street, we can go to the court website, type in the plate number, and it'll tell us where that vehicle was ticketed. So it narrows down. If they may have just left it on the side of the road and it's acquiring parking tickets, we can usually find it that way. Now, there's also a nationwide VIN check for salvage vehicles. That's a good link right there in case the vehicle went to salvage and you can't find it. Down below that is know what asset you're looking for. If you're chasing a lot of RVs and specialty units and you don't know what it is, you don't know the hitch type, you don't know the length, use that website. It's a very good resource. So if I send you a travel trailer to repo and you don't know if it's a utility trailer, cargo trailer, RV, bumper pull, fifth wheel, this VIN decoder is a huge help. Whenever you're chasing commercial vehicles, rigs, or anything of that sort, use the motor carrier website for USDOT. It'll log where it's been inspected, what checkpoints it's going through. That's important because if you're checking for a rig and you don't know if it's broke down or not, that is definitely a help. Tax assessor websites are also a huge asset to utilize. Look up the names, look up the address. If you cannot find an address, you know it exists, you can put that into that county tax assessor's website. And in some cases, they will give you the geocodes. So utilize these and check in your areas. If you have something in Baltimore, Maryland, or wherever, look and see where you're reporting everything to, and ask the local PD how you access those if you can't find it. If you don't ask, the answer is always no, and you're going to be blocked on that data. It doesn't hurt to at least ask where to find it. Let's jump on geolocation data. Many major finance companies are utilizing the internals of the vehicles, through the radio systems, through satellites. Sometimes they put little tags inside of them at the dealers. Also look up social media tags. Where are they tagging? We just reviewed that earlier. GPS device data. If you're a major finance company and you may not have access to the internal GPS, check with a lot of your dealers. Many of them, because of the spikes in fraud and vehicles that they are responsible for finding, they're putting LoJack type systems in there. And then, of course, last but not least, the LPR data. So for you that don't know, what is license plate recognition? It's plate scanners that do character recognition of license plates. It geotags the license plates with the GPS location and takes a picture. So it's a nationwide network. Geotags are important to know of what is nearby. It is not a perfect system. So if the GPS does not read perfectly, it's going to spit it out to the nearest read. So if I'm in a parking garage, it may put it, 500 feet west of me. So note where that GPS log is logging, because it may be in a parking garage, not parked on the nearest street. And every once in a while, if you go through an apartment complex and there's a side street, I'm deep in an apartment complex or trailer park that it doesn't understand, it may kick the address to the nearest street that it finds. So it might put it in a subdivision 4 streets over, and that's not where you're going to find the vehicle. So don't necessarily go off what you're seeing. Go off the geotag if it looks like it's in an open area. If there's a nearby parking garage, it's worth checking that parking garage, because the signals do bounce. Whenever you get the LPR hits, look for patterns in the data. Moving hits, generally, it'll help you understand the collateral's movement. If I see it's on the road all the time at night, they may be doing Uber, they may be doing Lyft, and I need to hit that home address a little bit more during the day. Utilize the camera scans to generalize and locate skips. If I get something that skips off to Denver, and it's getting scans up in Denver constantly, I think it's pretty safe to say I'm probably not going to repossess it down here in Texas if it was just scanned yesterday and been scanning consistently in Denver. So AI, this is going to be where it kind of gets a little bit interesting. So you enter the VIN number in there, or whatever, as a client, you can enter it in there, and it automatically does the impound monitoring, the LPR geo history, custom alerts and settings based on whatever it is that you need to know, and skip trace automation, LPR hit automation. Skip trace automation is great for repossession companies, because when you get in those after hours accounts, 8, 9 o'clock at night, the system automatically accepts it and it lightly scrubs it and deploys it out to the best possible addresses. Now, AI is fairly new, so there is some kind of warnings with this. It's still a work in progress for many companies and platforms. It is a machine learning, so of course it's going to learn as it goes, and it's only going to get better, in my opinion. Now, utilize and check what APIs your software may offer, because there's an automation process to a lot of it, and you need the API to have the communication between softwares. So again, AI is fairly new, and if you plan on building your own, it's going to be very costly, and use only a reputable company. There are many companies out there that already have this, and it's cheaper to just pay for the service than it is to create your own. I urge everybody to use caution. There's a lot of AI scam companies out there with sensitive data such as PII and access to bank accounts and things like that. They can really infiltrate systems and do a lot of damage. So use caution when building a system like that. If you don't know what you're doing, refer to somebody that does. Do not try to do this on your own. So whenever you have that hardcore skip, I always say you can switch it up. When you cannot find the data, it may be time to call in a professional. There's skip trace firms, that's their sole focus, is locating the debtor. So let them handle the hardcore skips. They're paid to locate it, so let them do their thing. If you're an agency owner and you have one that's getting a little stale, I always recommend switch your drivers. Put a different case manager on it. We have a switch up every week and a half, so they have 10 days on each account because fresh eyes are going to give fresh perspectives and a fresh focus. This is both for recovery agents and clients alike. Your general coverage area. If you have somebody that's in Miami that covers Fort Lauderdale too, and they don't have a lot or location in Fort Lauderdale, I don't know how they could effectively run that area. I think that that's a little far. It's possible, but general coverage areas, you want somebody that's in an area that can maintain quality and standards and run effectively. Yes, it may be a hardcore skip, and yes, it may be 150 miles away, but if you're not running that effectively, it just looks bad. So put somebody closer on it. Stick to your area that you're strong in. Now, no, private investigators are often expensive. So skip tracers are not as expensive and they're collateral recovery focused, which means they know repos. They're not doing stakeouts to catch a cheating spouse. They may be doing a stakeout to wait for that car to come from the garage. So skip tracers are different from PIs. Lenders, often when you get a skip, it's out of your area. So I often see online, who do I use if I have something in Spokane, Washington? I'm like, and it just drives me insane because if you don't know the agent, you're going off somebody else's word and sending a repo assignment to an unknown agent that puts you and your company at risk. Please do not do that. If it's time to repossess, do not dual assign to two agents in the same area and use a reputable source. ARA has international and national network of agents. We're insured, we're bonded, and we're a strong network that knows what we're doing. Repo.org is a free directory for lenders and agents alike. So the human side of skip tracing. So if you door knock or you deal with the debtors, make sure that you pay attention to this because it is important. It's simple psychology. When they're telling you a lie and they're going on about something, there's always a small truth to it. So make sure that you notate everything because you don't know what they told you that you'll go back on. Balance your challenge. There's a push and a pull when you're talking to a debtor, when to be firm, when to be softer. So use your push and pull, when to push them and when to pull. Agents, when you go to knock a door, they may have diarrhea of the mouth against the lender. Always be positive. Do not talk bad about the lender, but listen to them and just be the good guy. Let that, the lender's obviously the bad guy in their eyes, but make sure that you're the good guy. Listen to what they have to say and sometimes pause in the conversation intentionally. It's amazing that when you pause, sometimes people feel the need to talk to fill that void of the quiet. And they'll tell you things that they necessarily didn't mean to tell you. Again, the filing times, the human element of skip tracing, look at tax time when their driver's license is due, voter registrations. When it comes to voting and everybody's, all in their feelings about voting, always take a look at that because that means more people are voting. That's more voter registrations. Look and see where they registered to vote. And listen to the consumer. So sometimes they just want to be heard. And I've had several cases where they come off sideways, they're screaming, they're upset. And then afterwards, they're like, I never meant for this to be this way, but I do want to give the vehicle back. And it's like, great, that's what, I had to hear you scream at me for 20 minutes, but that's all I wanted was the vehicle. So sometimes it's better to listen than to talk to them. Just let them vent for a few minutes. If they're going to scream, let them scream and just bring it down. But again, be firm and fair and also realistic to the debtor situation. Your ultimate goal is to drive toward resolution and resolve the assignment, whether they turn it in at the dealer or they run and pay, which, our goal is always the asset. But at the end of the day, if they resolve it, it's one less case that you're looking at that's a potential dead end. So complex to simple. Again, remember the end goal. The end goal is to resolve the account. We will not find everybody. We will not repossess everybody. So just always remember that. Our goal is to resolve as much as we possibly can. Skip resolution may be as simple as contacting, picking up the phone and saying, hey, we'd like to come out and pick up the vehicle. We have a team that does that on our side that just makes simple phone calls, and you'd be amazed at how many people are like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for them to come pick it up. Not all, but there are some. Data searches, if you have that skip, just keep at it. Look for the new reporting, anything new, anything that you could possibly find to locate. Prioritize your door knocks and addresses as agents when we're out in the field. Prioritize the best possible addresses. That goes without saying. Lien holders, make sure you're still mailing letters. You know, as old fashioned as that sounds, people still do put in forwarding addresses. So when you mail the letters, keep an eye out for any forwarding mail that gets returned. Agents and clients, lenders, sometimes just listen to the debtor, guide them through, talk through the situation, and guide resolution. You know, they may want to pay $500 and their payments $800 a month, and they haven't paid in 6 months. So they're so far in the hole that nobody's going to come out a winner in that situation. Sometimes it's better to guide them through and walk them through how to surrender the vehicle and drop it off at the lot location. Often when we call the debtors, you know, we try to make sure that they're ready to surrender. And when they are, we often encourage them to drop it off at the lot. We don't even have to go chase it. They'll drop it off to us. Now, again, we've already ran the addresses, so you know, we just are trying to limit how much time and effort we have into an account. If they're willing to drop it off, by all means. Invalidate bad addresses. If you know an address is bad, try not to deploy that out in the field. Last thing you want to do is have an agent sidetracked on an address that's no good. And this is something that many lenders have done in the past, and you do not see it anymore. Offer a settlement in return for collateral. Sometimes something is better than nothing. If a debtor wants to bring a vehicle to the lot and they don't have the gas money, we'll give them a fuel card of $20 to bring it here. It actually is cheaper for us to give them $20 in fuel to drop it off than for them to, you know, play cat and mouse. Now, some lenders are also offering, you know, $500 if we get it back in good terms. There was a major lender about 10, 15 years ago. They would send them a settlement letter. Hey, if you give us back the collateral in good working order, not stripped, it runs and drives, we will consider it settled on your credit. If you're not chasing deficiency balances or selling them or doing anything with deficiency balances, that may be a route you may want to go. Now, again, as a repo agent, we will not repossess everything. There's some people that will lock them in a garage. They'll laugh at you because it's behind a gate and they know you can't get it. So if you're a lender and you go legal, you get the replevins, start with a simple demand letter from an attorney. An attorney can say legal things that we as a repossessor and you as a collection agent cannot. So have the attorney start with a simple legal demand, phone call, letter, and then when they need to, file a replevin. Now, many attorneys do not have great follow through, I find, but there are quite a few that do. So find the right attorney that has solid follow through. The one that will call the constable and ask what's going on with my court order. The one that will call the judge and say, hey, can we get this taken care of because it's been dragging on for 2-3 weeks. There was a major lender that I firsthand seen how they handled their legal affairs, and 7 months to serve a writ. The bonds were already expired. It was a nightmare because the attorney just basically filed the paperwork and just let it sit on the judge's desk. So this is something that not many skip tracers do, and I would encourage anybody in all departments, including that of repossession agents. It's called reverse skip tracing. This is a way in which you sharpen your skills. So you've been chasing that hardcore skip. It finally gets repossessed off LPR hit, however they found it. So look at it, review the address reporting. Did you overlook an address? It was recovered from an address that you had. Maybe it was an address you didn't have. Was it on one of the reports something that you overlooked? Customers, when they come in, if you're a repo agent, you may be able to get the firsthand experience of listening to them brag about how it was in the backyard here, or, you know, had it blocked in, whatever. Listen to them brag to sharpen your pencil. Do not be discouraged by that. It just lets you know how to better yourself in finding those skips that like to hide. So repossession agencies. Now, many of your lenders may want to cover their ears because they may not want to hear the truth, but we gotta address the elephant in the room. What is the repossessor's job? It's to take back ownership of the vehicle. It is not the agent's job to skip trace. However, we do skip trace because we do want the same thing that you do. We want to push positive recoveries. We want to resolve the accounts, and we don't want to run 50,000 addresses that are no good. So increased cost and low margins mean we have to skip trace. So agents work with your client and communicate, make sure your updates are solid and clear. And again, lenders, please push any and all information that you have access to. You know, your credit reporting, if you have access to LPR, push that down through to your agent so we can see it. And lenders, and I would encourage and incentivize repo agencies for resolutions of assignments, incentive to be paid on to the actual repo agent, not the forwarder who's just pushing it through, the actual boots on the ground repossession agent. So repo agencies, and I also encourage repo agencies to push it down to the boots on the ground. You know, there's some agencies that have hundreds of boots on the ground agents driving the trucks. Encourage them to knock doors, encourage them to get results. If they're not getting paid, they're going to drive by and just go to where the repos are, and they want to get paid for picking up vehicles, not concluding accounts. Now, there is a major lender in the United States, one of the largest lenders, that has started to pay for resolution rates. So they take the repo and resolution, combine it as one, and based off your scorecard, there's different tiers. That's fairly new, so it is something a work in progress to see if it's going to yield results. So agents and lenders, currently, I don't believe RDN has a way to track positive resolutions if they pay or something like that. So you have to track that yourself. Use your sub statuses, create a system where you can measure that. You need to track results because some agents are great at picking up cars, and you have others that are stronger at results. At the end of the day, it's the goal is the same. Let's resolve the account. So as we come to the end, I would just want to kind of reiterate a couple of things. Learn, innovate, and adapt. Skip tracing, just like anything, it changes constantly. What's great today may not work tomorrow. Join an association. Join any association, lender associations. They help keep you informed. Many of these associations have committees. NARS is a great repo event open to both lenders and agents. It's where we can all come together and communicate, and we can see the pain points on both sides. Agents, I encourage you to listen to lenders and hear their pain points, have an understanding of their needs and wants. Let's get smarter. Lenders also have roundtables. If you do not have roundtables, I would encourage that. It helps put your collectors, management, and your actual boots on the ground repo agent together in one space where they can collaborate and come up with something even better. And again, last but not least, trade shows. Not just NARS, but I attend lender events. And sometimes when I'm in Vegas, I'll get a ticket to other events. It doesn't matter what it is. I once went to a avionics one and realized, wow, rocket scientists are really that smart. So that comes to the end of the presentation. Again, we don't have the answers to every little tiny thing. It is variable based off location of what you may have access to. And at the end of the day, we all want to learn, and we can learn a lot from each other. And there's different tips and techniques that we have all used and continue to use. So I encourage you, help out your fellow lender, repossessor. There's a lot of things that we have access to that the other guy may not, and vice versa. So double check who has access to what. Let's share the data, and let's get some of these skips picked up, because at the end of the day, it's the thrill of the chase, and there's no greater feeling than getting that asset across that finish line.
James, thanks so much. We've got one question in the queue. Everybody, if you've got a question, please type it in the Q&A box and we'll get it answered for you. First question, James. When skip tracing through social media and or Carfax, etc., how do we set it up? Through a work email, through a Jane Doe account? How would you do it?
So I don't recommend a Jane Doe account. I would do it through, because you don't want to be classified as pre-texting. So you got to be cautious on that. And I would run it by your legal of any finance company, if you're in a finance company, to do that. you can do a real name. Maybe you shorten, if your name is, and I'm looking at, if your name's Cassandra, maybe you put Cassie, use Elizabeth, you put Liz, so they don't necessarily know. You don't have to put your personal information on there. Keep it as simple as possible with minimized information. Last thing you do is want a debtor finding your information and knocking on your door. Maybe they're good at skip tracing too. So if you're doing a Carfax account, you can set it up with your company email. Now, they do offer a trial. I know we did talk to them about an ARA discount program. And Amy out of Ohio, she may be able to further how they used Carfax to further reduce skips and what yielded and worked for them on Carfax. But I believe they were able to use their company email on that.
Cool. What are some of the top free resources you'd recommend for a small recovery company that may not have the money to invest in extra skip tracing tools?
So a lot of those links that I did post, I'll go back on the slides real quick.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
And y'all, we're going to be sharing these the slide deck when we get the recording up on the ARA website.
So if you're a smaller company, these are all free websites. Again, I do not like spending money to find skips. I don't like affecting our margins. So check in your area what you may have access to, whether it be parking tickets, whether it be where it was towed from, like auto return. If you play around in there, you'll see where a vehicle's been repossessed before. It's amazing how many we get. We'll have an address that has 123 Main Street and East 6th Street or whatever the address is, but it was just repoed 4 months ago from another address. We run the repo address, we go there and we pick it up. It's amazing that the lender never follows through or gives it to us. Or maybe it was picked up off an LPR hit and the lender just didn't realize that they had the address on the notes. So utilize any free things that you can find. If you're in a rural area, that does get a little bit more tough, but call down to the local sheriff's office. They may be able to help you, or they'll run the VIN number for you to see if it's ever been towed. It's amazing what some of these small towns go into. As far as resources, try as much as possible to get on with limited software brokers. Try some of their trials. A lot of them have 30-day free trials. If you try it for 30 days, don't always look at what the cost is versus how much it's going to save you. If I have 5 addresses on an assignment and I can narrow down, hey, this is the strongest address possible and that's where I'm going to go, you just eliminated 4 addresses by going there and in a perfect world, going there and picking up the vehicle versus running the 4 other addresses. So also see that as a cost saving measure, not just what the upfront cost is. Now it's not cheap for many access, but if you're a smaller repo company, take it with a grain of salt. One bite at a time. Start simple with the simple search reports would be my recommendation.
Thanks, James. A couple of comments in the Q&A. One is that TLO offers Carfax lookups. Another question for you. With most accounts flipping over to new agencies, generally in 14 to 15 days, how can we ensure that we're getting the best paper? We scrub every account, but we find some lenders do not give us the info we need. No POE, no info on third parties, etc.
That's a tough one. That is something that we struggle with. So you have to kind of have a process. Maybe you start triggering, we do pre-skip right away. Then after the addresses have been ran in 5 to 10 days, we'll do a more in-depth search. And then, the last 3 to 4 days of the assignment, we're just going to start calling the phone numbers. Let's start blowing up the account. The worst thing at that point is the debtor tells you, no, I'm not giving it to you. With them flipping accounts every 15 days, you kind of have to move quickly. You have to get your agents, you have to have a process in place. And this is why many agents are shrinking their coverage areas, so they're more on top of the accounts and can increase that scorecard. Now, I will tell you, one of the biggest struggles of repossession agencies We put all of the information in there, we request information, and we might as well be talking to the brick wall we're sitting next to because nobody responds to us. We'll have solid information. Sometimes, hey, this one's sitting at the dealer, they just need a release letter, or this is where the vehicle's sitting, go pick it up, and it's outside of our coverage area. Nobody responds. Then, it flips a tier, flips a tier. Then we're getting a third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier, the same account when we've already concluded it the first time. So lenders, I encourage you, please start reading the notes. Listen to what are the agents that are telling you, the agents that actually work the accounts. Please listen to what they're saying, because communication at the end of the day has to go back and forth to yield results. So that is a great point, and a huge challenge that we all face. I would just again reiterate, get a process as a repossession agent and as a lender, a process together on how you handle it, and handle it quickly, because you do have limited time. You cannot really do in-depth skip tracing on that short amount of time. You can lightly skip trace and try to make contact as quick as possible.
Eric had a question in the chat about LPRs. That LPRs are now limiting the image to basically just the plate, and they're removing the background of the image. And he said, I noticed in the DRN image that you had in your slide, the background was missing. Just curious if that's something new.
That was something off just a Google search image. They may only be giving the plate number because, again, with AI, you may be able to put that picture in there and it's going to tell you exactly where that picture was taken. So that may be why they're doing it. I can't speak for them, or maybe it's just a data thing, and a reduced size photo kind of helps save room in their servers. I can't speak for that as far as why they're doing that. So that may be a question directly for DRN.
Someone had posted in the Q&A, an anonymous participant posted the top 3 free tools that they use, and I just copied that in the chat. Vanessa has a question. I feel like due to the amount of insane spam and scam calls, people don't answer their phones like they used to, nor check their messages. What are some good tips in leaving a firm voicemail to get the debtor to call in?
So there's two sides to that. One is a firm email or firm voicemail. If you're allowed to text, I would, again, that's more of a lender side of things. If they have permission to text, I would recommend texting. But as far as calling and leaving a message, so there's two flip sides to that coin. One, you can be firm and they're not going to call you. And then the other, maybe you want to be a little bit looser, hey, Vanessa, give me a shout. My new cell phone number, or my new phone number is X. And then sometimes they'll call you back because you're more informal. They're like, wait, who is that? Let me call them real quick. Do not call too many times in one day. We limit 2 phone calls. So one trick of the trade that's really great: when you call somebody, they don't recognize the number, they will not answer. I think probably half of us in this webinar are probably guilty of that. I don't know that number, I'll let it go to voicemail. If they do that to you, do not leave a voicemail on the first time. Give it a minute or two and then call them right back. And I find about 60% of the people will answer when you call them right back the second time. But don't call them back to back. Give it a minute or two, then call them. Let them digest. And then when they see the number again, they'll call. If you call back to back, they're not going to answer. They're going to just hit ignore, thinking it's the same call that rolled over. Give it a minute and then call them back. And you'll see that yields a lot of positive results.
That's great. Any words of encouragement for a newcomer?
Go hands on with some of these, not hands on in a boxing sense, but go hands on these accounts. So when you go in and you start repossessing, if every vehicle and every asset was just sitting there with a bow tie on it, it would kind of get boring. I think half of us, we wouldn't do what we do. You could do towing. Insurance is cheaper. You don't take as much of a risk of getting shot at, but it's the thrill of the chase. It's the leaving no stone unturned, looking under every stone, every house, every alley, finding that hardcore skip. There's no greater feeling. There's no greater feeling that when five other agencies in town have been looking for a vehicle and I was able to find it, that gives you such a great sense of accomplishment. There's no greater feeling that another greater feeling is when they told you to F off, you're never going to find it. You're never going to get it. And you see that come across, I call it the finish line, but it's our fence. When you see it come through the fence, you're like, yep, wasn't going to get you. Guess that didn't work out the way you thought it would. So there's no greater feeling. You got to get a sense of the thrill of the chase. And that's what's kept me in this for so long. It's not the repossession itself, it's the thrill of the chase. Never knowing where you're going to be from day to day, never knowing which hardcore skip. I call it shaking the tree to see what'll fall out of it. It's any repossessor will tell you they almost can't plan anything because they don't know where their day is going to take them. It's the thrill of the chase.
Dennis made a comment. He said that we use a field visit company who will make contact with debtors on behalf of a lender to get them to call us, or will leave a letter asking to do the same. We've had good success by this method.
Yeah, so and don't take it with a grain of salt. Don't be offensive to this comment, but the difference is a lot of the lenders are paying these field visit companies. Many lenders are not paying anything to the repo companies. So not from an agency owner, not from a skip tracer perspective, but put it from a boots on the ground perspective. You're an agent in the truck. You're going from address to address, spending hours looking for vehicles, scanning for vehicles, whatever your model is, or you could spend hours knocking on doors. And I find that it's a 20% success rate. But remember that if you have 100 assignments, the average is, I think, 3 addresses per assignment that's sent over. You have 300 doors to knock. Put in 300 random addresses all across the area that you live in, and you'll see that is very time consuming. So when these field visit companies go out, they get paid to conclude, they get paid to door knock. We go out and essentially do the same thing, but it's hard to incentivize the boots on the ground agent because they only get paid when the vehicles get picked up. That's where their focus is. And our company, we try to focus on resolution. Unfortunately, the repo companies have to focus on repossessing the collateral and less on conclusion, because if they focus on conclusion, it's going to bankrupt them. It's just the reality. The average tow truck to go down the road, it's $1.08 per mile every single mile it goes down the road. Even if we send out door knockers, again, that's another person we got to pay, another vehicle we got insured, more cameras we got to throw on something. So, there's a balance there, and finding a healthy balance for both the lender and the repossessor is something that definitely needs to be explored to further resolution.
Steve asked a question in the chat. Do you have any methods that you find beneficial for power sports?
It's powers. Okay, so this is great, and I'm glad you brought that up. So if you have power sports, boats especially, so probably about 20% of them I find don't have trailers financed with them. The first thing I do is find the selling dealer, call them up and say, hey, you guys sold this boat. Where did you deliver it to? They didn't deliver it to the guy's driveway or gal's driveway. I can promise you that 90% of the time it's at a marina somewhere. So I call up the marina. Most of the time, that's where it is. It's as simple as finding it. Now, power sports and that type of stuff, they may be in storage. So look up again, the insurance garaging location is important on that. But and it's same thing with RVs and that type of stuff. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, and that's where knocking the door comes into play. You're not going to find them just sitting in the driveway. If you live in a subdivision, you're not going to find a 36-foot RV just sitting there. Same thing with motorcycles and small jet skis. They get stolen quite a bit. So they're not just going to be sitting out. Odds are they're in the garage. Now, when you send by door knockers, they can't get a hold of anybody. If the agent's not knocking the door, now all of a sudden you think you have a skip on your hands, and it may not be a skip. It may just be a matter of catching the debtor at the right time to open up the garage and give them to you. So don't give up on those. Just keep hammering away. And on a human mental note, I like to go out on the bad weather days for a motorcycle. For some reason, it's just something with psychology. If it's rainy and it's not a day you would want to ride a motorcycle, when you go out and knock the doors, for some reason, the psychology of it, they're more apt to give you the bike or jet ski or boat. It's just weird.
Well, we've got time for one more question, and I went ahead and put in the chat if you've got any questions after we end. Just email your questions to info@trulywow.com, and we'll be sure to get them answered. Last question from Ashley. Do you use anything other than social media to locate close friends?
So when you look up a lot of the skip reports, I didn't really know how to give examples of that because I couldn't put any PII on there. But if you pulled up a John Smith at this address, a lot of your skip software programs will give associates the first degree, second degree, third degree associates. Now it's not perfect and not always will it tell you how it's related. So utilize that and crisscross it with everything else that you have. If you have some kind of social media, look on there and see if they're related, or utilize if they've shared addresses, narrow it down by age. That's tough to figure out how they're related on some of these. There are some that will tell you how they're related, and then some that do not. So utilize different search engines and utilize different data brokers to see what information they give you. Every one gives a little bit different of information.
Right on. Okay, well, everybody, we are out of time, so we're gonna shut it down. And again, if you have questions, please email me at info@trulywow.com, truly-wow.com. We'll have the replay and the slides posted to the ARA website before the end of the week. And lastly, if you um, haven't registered for the 2025 ARA convention, make sure you do so at repo.org/ARA-convention. Just put that in the chat. Everybody, thank you. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again next month. James, thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you,
you,
everybody,
sir.
for
Have a good
joining.
day.
Thanks. Bye.